Alright, this video is for Blended Algebra 2, Unit 5, Lesson 1, homework or practice. We'll do video for both questions 1 and 2. So it says use the formula opposite of b over 2a to find the turning point for the quadratic as well as the axis of symmetry. So we have a quadratic that's here in standard form. I know it's in standard form because there are no parentheses. In order to use this formula, I need to know what a, b, and c are for my quadratic. A is the number in front of the x squared, the coefficient. B is the number in front of x, and C is the constant. Now, first thing, let's find the equation of the axis of symmetry. That's always going to be an x equals. And in order to find that, I'm going to simply put values A and B into that equation. X equals, now take the opposite of 12, which is negative 12, divided by 2 times A is negative 3. Well, that's going to be negative 12 divided by negative 6, which equals 2. So for this graph, my axis of symmetry, the invisible line that goes through the parabola, happens at x equals 2. The vertex is an ordered pair. Right? In my ordered pair, you have an x and a y value. Well, the x value is the 2 from the equation of the axis of symmetry. The y value happens when you take this x and plug it back in to the x in the equation. So you'd have negative 3 times 2 squared plus 12 times 2 plus 1. Well, let's type that in the Desmos and find the value here. Okay, so negative 3 times 2 squared plus 12 times 2 plus 1. And I get an output of 13. That's the y value of my vertex. Then the y-intercept is the constant that's on the end of standard form, 0, 1. Now, if you wanted to check your work here, I would type that original equation of the parabola into Desmos. I would take negative 3x squared plus 12x plus 1. If I click on my vertex, I see that it matches what I found, 213. The axis of symmetry is the invisible line, x equals 2, but you can see that red line goes right through the parabola. And then the y-intercept, if I clicked on it here, would be at 0, 1, like we wanted. All right, next problem. Number 2. You have to graph a parabola and then identify the key information. 1/2 times x plus 4, the quantity squared, minus 2. All right, to find the vertex, you take the opposite of what's inside the parentheses, so negative 4, and the same as what's outside the parentheses. Now, in order to determine that this is a maximum or a minimum, I look at the number in front of the parentheses, 1/2. 1/2 is positive, which means my parabola is going to open up, and my vertex is going to be a minimum. The other thing I can tell here is the axis of the equation of the axis of symmetry. Always x equals, and it's the x value from the vertex. Now, what I need to do is plot that parabola in Desmos, and then plot the points on my paper to answer the rest of the question. So we'll type in 1/2. Make sure you arrow out of the fraction. Parentheses x plus 4 squared minus 2. Now let's double check what we had at least. We found that our vertex is at negative 4, negative 2. That's good. And the axis of symmetry, I'm going to erase this in a second here, but is equal to the x equals 4 that we found. All right, so that's our visible axis of symmetry. We do have a minimum. And then let's talk about plotting this. So we're going to make a table. And you're going to find, you see some decimals here. We don't really need the decimals. We need kind of the whole numbers. So I know I'm at negative 4. Looks like my next best point is going to be at negative 2. And then at 0. So I have, let's see. Let's clear out our table and let's start over here. So I'll have negative 4. Negative 1 you can plot, but you don't really need it. So I'm just going to delete that out. 0, what do we have? Negative 2 though we needed. Right, so negative 4, negative 2, and 0. And then I probably need to go backwards. Let's try negative 6 and negative 8. That would do it. I think those are good points. So if you need to, if the table's hard to look at, click on the points on your graph. But those are the ones you're going to plot. So go ahead and hit pause. All right, now, remember, my domain of my graph is left to right. And it's always, because I have arrows on both ends, my domain of these parabolas is always negative infinity to infinity or all real numbers. We'll do the range next because we did domain. The range, I start at the bottom, which is from negative 2. And my graph goes up forever to infinity. Now the roots, the x-intercepts here, I can find either from the graph that I made and see that those happen at negative 6 and negative 2, or I can click on my graph from Desmos, get rid of some of these, and see that those are my two x-intercepts, negative 6, negative 2. My y-intercept is at 0, 6, which I can also see by looking at the table here, that x is at 0, gives me an output of 6. Okay, so that's this one here. All right, that's it. If you have other questions on these features of vertex form and the parabolas, go ahead and ask your teacher for some.